Hello, Lockdown Diaries, day 46, a few days absent, so apologies for that, but hoping to catch up that with two videos being uploaded today. The first of which is a Zoom conversation with Sam Manicom, who many of you may have heard of. And for those who haven't heard of Sam Manicom, Sam, explain and introduce yourself.
Gosh, how long have we got?
3 hours.
All right. I was born and brought up in Central West Africa. My parents lived and worked out there, and I lived there until I was 10 years old, and then came back to the UK. President Mobutu was playing a few games in the world's longest running civil war, and spent a chunk of my life here educating, and then the rest of my life, most of it, I've been out and about traveling in one form or another. Bicycle and hitchhiking and busing and training and so on. And then I discovered motorcycling, and within the first year became a complete addict. It took me at least 6 months to learn how not to fall off, but I did start off on the trip. Only six weeks it took me to pass my test, and then 6 weeks later I was at the edge of the Sahara. So I kind of had a lot to learn. But by the time I made it to Africa, I just thought, no, what an awesome way to travel this is. And I've stayed with it ever since.
So what year are we talking about, Sam, when you learnt to ride?
Well, this is a long time ago now. It's 1992. So traveling back then, it was all pre-GPS and mobile phones and Google and all of the rest of it. It was maps and getting lost, and it was a fun way to travel. It was very uncomplicated in many ways.
Do you sort of miss those days now? The simplicity of previous decades?
Actually, no, I don't, because it's down to me as to how much tech I use when I'm traveling. So GPS, what an awesome piece of equipment this is. And for me, I use it to get lost. So in other words, I'll just turn it off and we'll hoolie off and follow tracks until we suddenly think, well, actually time's getting on a little bit. We better find our way home again, or to wherever we were planning to get to. And so we'll turn it on and we'll follow it. But it also allows us to, well, for me, for example, because I do quite a lot of presentations and things like that, it allows me to get there on time. When I first started doing presentations and didn't have a GPS, I'd be turning up at some of the venues 2 hours in advance just because I was so determined not to be late and let everybody down. So that's really nice.
You see, the technology is complementing your travel rather than dictating it as such.
Oh, absolutely. Traveling with the sole use of a GPS is a bit like putting blinkers on, horse racing blinkers. You see what's in front and you see nothing of what's going on from the sides, unless you do those quick head dashes to the left and right. But it's not the same as having the full view in front of you. And I like that. I like maps a lot. I like the art of maps. I like the history that they show. And I like all of the opportunities that they show you. Just the place names, for example. Why on earth did a place get called Coffee Fountain? I've got to go there and find that out. And of course, pre-Google, that's exactly what I did. And Africa, for example, 7,000 miles long, and I did 22,000 miles in the end, just purely and simply because the bike gave me the freedom to think, well, I wonder why. Let's go and find out.
Do you think it's easy in this day and age just to stick your head in your GPS unit and follow it? Does it take more effort to break away from that sort of trend? It takes more effort to sit down with a map and plan a route, doesn't it, as opposed to just putting in your destination and watching arrows? Yeah,
but I think people who understand GPS, they do their own electronic version of that, don't they, with all of the different waypoints and so on that they're putting in. A lot of experienced travelers that I come across are people who use both maps and GPS, and they won't travel without them both.
Yeah.
And I think that's great. It's much more easy when you're sitting with a bunch of people that you've met along the way, and them telling you, oh yeah, you've got to go and look at this place, and out comes the map and you spread it in front of you, and oh yeah, it's over there, and you know exactly what I mean.
You've just mentioned Africa sort of in passing, but I guess the trip was bigger than just Africa. I mean, just sum up where you went in that after you passed your test, 6 months after passing your test. What trip did you actually go on?
I planned to ride down the west side of Africa, in part because I wanted to go to where I'd been brought up as a kid. That just seemed like a really good objective. And I'm a real fan of Africa anyway. I think it's absolutely fascinating continent. But just as I passed my bike test, everything went pear-shaped in Algeria, and all of the borders closed, Algeria, Niger, and so on. And nobody had a clue when they were supposed to be opening up again. And so I thought, well, I've handed him a notice. I've sold everything I've got. I sold my house and car and furniture to fund the trip. I better try down the east side. So 6 weeks later, there I was heading down the east side. And by the time I got to the bottom of Africa, I was thinking to myself, is there a good reason to go home? Well, no, there wasn't. And I was having such a ball, and Africa was way cheaper to travel than I thought it was going to be, mostly because I'm a bit of a cheapskate anyway, and I like wild camping.
Of you cooking your own food on a stove
exactly.
in a hotel room, Sam. I know those stories.
And so when I got to the bottom, I just thought, well, if there's no good reason to go home, where can I go next? And I arranged passage for myself and my bike on a container ship to go from South Africa to Australia. And so the trip from there took me Australia, New Zealand, up in Southeast Asia, across Asia and the Middle East and through Eastern Europe, then back through Southern Africa, across to South America, South Central America, and up through North America. So it was 8 years in total, or 8.5 years, 200,000 miles.
Is that what it? 200,000. It was on an R80, was it?
R80GS, that's right. It was the first year of the Paralever.
Called Libby.
That's right. I know a lot of people that don't name their bikes, but for me, I spend so much time with my bike, it becomes personality. And because I used to travel on my own all of the time, quite often my bike was the only person that I'd talk to, particularly in a day. I know this sounds incredibly soppy, but my bike would talk to me. Oh, I really like this road, or hang on a minute, stop doing that to me. This isn't any good, etc., etc. And
I'd never call a bike a name, Sam.
No, of course you wouldn't. Now, where's Dorothy? I hope she's not listening.
She's not.
But I started to think, what can I call my bike? And what does my bike give me? And I started to think, well, she's given me freedom. I can't call her free. That's way too hippie-ish. And that would just be ridiculous. And then I started to think, well, actually, she's given me liberty. She's given me liberty to explore. And so that was shortened to Libby, and she became Libby. And I cracked up laughing when I got to the USA, because I found a chain store called Libby and Sam, of all things. So, yeah, you can imagine the grin on my face.
There's got to be a photo there, was there?
Pardon?
Is there a photo?
There is somewhere. Yeah, in the archive somewhere, I think.
Just going back to the departure, because a lot of people have got the ambition or the aim or the intention to do a trip either as big or slightly smaller than yours, but they don't end up making the leap of faith into setting off. What do you think made you turn that idea into a reality? What pushed you out the door?
It was a combination of things, really. One was, once I'd got the dream and I decided that actually potentially it was possible, and I'd been through all sorts of different options. The trip came about when I was sitting drunk in the pub, and I was analysing life and where I was going, and then suddenly realised that actually I didn't have any responsibilities. And then I was thinking, well, what are you going to do if you've got no responsibilities and your feet are itching again? You've got to do something while you can, because you may never be this free again. And I was sitting there thinking, and my first thought was, well, maybe I could learn to fly a microlight and fly that the length of Africa. And then I was thinking, well, okay, let's have a chew on that. But what about driving a Citroen 2CV the length of Africa? And eventually I came round to the idea of a motorcycle, and it just seemed to be the most logical way of traveling the continent. And it would be a new challenge, something that I hadn't done before. And I'm talking away and I've forgotten what your original question is. That's classic, isn't it?
No, I think you answered it, to be honest. The thing that drove you to the road, it seems as though you had the lack of responsibility, although you said you sold your house and things. So you'd obviously, you got some responsibility, but decided it was worth selling that to go off on the trip. And I think also you answered it by saying that it was that burning feet, that desire to go and do something while you had the opportunity. I think so.
And I think that the clincher in the end, because when I got down as far as Greece, I was actually quite afraid. The bike was too big for me. I didn't know how to ride it. I felt like some sort of motorcycling accessory hanging on the back of it, trying not to fall off it. And it was telling me what to do, really. And it wasn't a comfortable experience at all. I went straight from a little 125cc, which I rode for 6 weeks, onto the 800cc BMW. And it just felt like a complete monster.
Mm.
And if I hadn't told my mates in the pub that I was going to ride the length of Africa, then I might have chickened out. But of course, the loss of face thing was it would have just been too much.
It's a big driver, isn't it? It is a big driver. Once you've told people you're going to do it, you've either got to do it or forever face the scrutiny of your peers, I guess.
You have, and there are very few things that I've chickened out of in my life. I've made a lot of mistakes by having a go at things that perhaps I shouldn't have had a go at, but there are very few things I've walked away from thinking, I can't do this without trying. And that was also in my mind as I was riding down through Greece. But it was also, I set off in February because, of course, trying to get through North Africa at any other time of year, you've got to do it in the winter. And
too hot? The heat is too much.
Oh, phenomenally so. But Northern Europe was just bitterly cold. But by the time I got to Greece, things were getting a little bit warmer, and life was getting a bit more happy, and I was getting used to the bike. So yeah, that helped.
Because you said fear, which is something that a lot of people won't admit to. The fear in the early stages of a trip is quite real, isn't it? And how do you think you transitioned from being fearful in Greece to then having the confidence to carry on into what was, once you've left Greece and entered the top of Africa, you're really engaged with it. Then you've got nowhere to go, have you, but onwards. So what changed, and how did you overcome that fear?
I don't see fear as a disadvantage. I see fear as a sense that gets heightened. And I learned through other trips that if you change the word fear into respect, it stops being a negative and it starts to become a positive. You respect something that you don't know, you respect something that you don't understand, you respect something that you feel very uncomfortable about. And in other words, all of your senses are firing on all cylinders and you're fully focused on whatever that fear sensation started off with. Fear tends to put us off doing things. When we respect something, that means that we go into it with a sense of caution and heightened awareness. And actually, I quite like the sensation of fear. It doesn't mean that I'm a fear junkie. It just means that I'm buzzing. I'm fully awake. I'm aware. And I kind of like that sensation. But I hate the thought that I will ever become a fear junkie. I'm not the sort of person that throws myself off the top of mountains with a bit of fabric hanging off my back, or rides a mountain bike along a ridge through the top of a mountain range. That's, to me, no, that's not me.
So it's a healthy thing, really, the fear, because I think listening to other people who are on the cusp of doing an adventure or planning one, I think they're trying to eradicate the fear that they're feeling. But in what you're saying, really, is to more harness and redefine that fear and use it to your advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the understanding comes about through that word respect, because it's not only the respect from the things that I've talked about, but it's having the respect to learn something about the places that you're going to. Part of the fun of travel for me is learning about the different countries that I'm going to. And I'm not talking about in-depth knowledge, but I'm talking about, well, what's a little bit of the history of this place? What's the political situation in it? Do the people in the country have any particular customs or unique things that I can learn about when I'm actually there and that I can visit and discover more about? I don't want to go into a country treading my size 10 motorcycle boots over somebody else's culture. So I try and learn a little bit. And that respect means that I get more out of the journey, but it also means that I'm less afraid of where I'm going. It also means that if there are some dodgy areas of a country, I'm more likely to have learned about those. And I think about countries as being like a big city. And even here in the UK, there are some parts of some cities that I don't particularly want to go to late on a Friday night, because well, all right, pre-COVID we're talking, because, you know, fisticuffs might be out and you know, that sort of thing. I'd rather go somewhere that's interesting and less threatening.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, the issue of safety, isn't it? I saw there was a post, I think it was on advrider.com, and I think it was an American chap who was wanting to travel the world, but he was very worried about factions and unrest, even in Europe. And he was clearly, it built up this fear factor of what he was going to encounter. And I think he was looking for some sort of comfort blanket or some advice on how to overcome that. And I think it's what you say is that if you see every country as a city, then there are large parts of it that are perfectly safe. And it's just using your, I guess, common sense and research to avoid those bits that might potentially give you trouble. So what would you say to the man to reassure him that he is not in danger?
There's danger everywhere. Shit happens, but it's how you deal with it that makes the difference. I know that from your book, Running Towards the Light, that you went into backstreet Chicago and backstreet Detroit. And when I read that you did that, but fascinating.
Yeah, fascinating. Yeah.
And you can ignore those, but they're actually part of the culture of a country. Now, I went into various places in Africa, for example, townships on the edge of cities, Nairobi, South Africa, Cape Town, that perhaps I shouldn't have gone into. But I went in there with full awareness, absolutely no belongings except for the clothes that I stood up in, no money, no watch, no jewelry, nothing. And I was fascinated by what I saw. And because I went in with a very unaggressive sort of attitude, there was a lot of suspicion towards me in both places. But after the first people started talking to me, and I was just explaining, hey, look, I want to learn. I see so much in the press about what dangerous, dodgy places these are, what your home is just absolutely appalling, and that white people shouldn't come here. In fact, no visitors should come here. How can I take that as read without going and finding out for myself? So if you want to talk to me, then I'm going to learn. And if I'm learning, that's the whole point of me traveling. Now, that's a pretty extreme example, and I wouldn't have done that had I not traveled a lot already and had been fairly comfortable in some fairly dodgy places. I walked through a large chunk of India on a trip, for example, and I was sleeping on the streets when I was doing that. And I learned so much from doing that, which gave me the confidence. But with the chap from the United States that you were talking about, don't let it put you off. There are dodgy areas and there are dodgy people, but actually the percentage of both of those are tiny in comparison to the pure magic there is out there. And there is that old saying, nothing ventured, nothing gained. And when you go out and you explore places that give you that sensation of uncertainty, it's when you're going to find out who you are. How are you going to cope with those places? It's the unfound depths, isn't it? It's one of the big buzzes about travel, don't you think?
I think so. Yeah, I think people are sometimes frightened of the confrontation with yourself that comes with travel. You've got nowhere to hide from yourself, have you, when you're out there on your own? And I think that's, to me, is the most daunting thing. Yep. It's not the fear of other people; it's fear of yourself and what you realise or don't realise about yourself.
The buck stops with us, doesn't it, when we're out there on our own? And if you do something stupid, you've got to sort it out.
Yeah, so that's what I was saying. Is it everywhere you go, there you are type thing? You know, yeah. I mean, for me, I was trying to get away from myself on the bike trip, but after 23,000 miles, you realise that no matter how fast you ride, the shadow is always only a step behind you type thing. So that was, I think that was the biggest fear for me, really. But in terms of as you say, people, I think you get used to presenting yourself in a way that doesn't antagonize, but doesn't make you a victim as well. And it's sort of a happy medium between not being on your back step, so not looking vulnerable, but at the same time not looking aggressive. And it is a fine line, isn't it? And I think people respect that. Like you say, if you go into a slightly problematic environment, but as long as you don't show that you're going to be a pushover, nor going to be a threat, I think you can take far bigger steps with where you venture.
No, totally agree. And for me, it's often going into new situations with a smile and a handshake. because you're actually doing something that's active. You're doing something that's respectful towards other people, the handshake. The smile is meaning that you're open. And none of those things scream victim.
No, no.
All of them scream positive, friendly, opening. And of course, some people just take complete advantage or try to. And that's when we turn around and walk away, isn't it? And just leave. But mostly I found you treat people like that and people suddenly warm. People who are aggressive to you because they were afraid of you. And that so often happens, doesn't it? The uncertainty of what this foreigner's going to be like. It means that they're being aggressive first. But yeah, smile, handshake, it rocks.
And I think it's something you learn, isn't it? It's almost traveling is learning in the sense that you start out and you don't get it right. You do things wrong, whether it's even essential things like packing and route planning or whatever, or human interaction with others. You never get it right straight off the bat. And it's something, I think people worry about getting it wrong to the point where they don't do the trip. But I think if you accept you are going to do it wrong or not kind of perfect in the early days, but you do learn and you grow and I guess you build your skills as a traveller, which only comes through time.
Yeah, and that's absolutely right. And perfect example of that from my side of things was arriving in Africa, been riding a motorcycle for 3 months the day and I got to the Sahara Desert, and I had hardly done any riding off-road, and it gave me the willies. The thought of riding on sand and all of those sorts of things, I was bricking it. But my plan was, look, you're going to make a mistake, lots of them. But every time you do, don't get angry, don't get fearful about it. Just take a moment and stand back and think, well, what did you cock up this time? What did you do? How did that happen? Okay, well, yeah, I can see that you opened the throttle a little bit too hard when perhaps you shouldn't have done. The back end spun out. So next time you see that surface, don't do that, or try not to. And slowly you learn. Yeah,
same with getting sort of tricked, isn't it? Rather, or duped on the street to give money for something or whatever. You do it once and you think, oh, you idiot. You think,
we all get ripped off, don't we? Sooner or later, something's going to happen. And at the time, it's almost embarrassing, isn't it? But then you think back and you just got to laugh at yourself for letting yourself get in that situation. But you're right, you learn.
Yeah, you learn. I think what was interesting just in your earlier talking of the story, Sam, is that because you've got a connection with Africa, you'd almost got a route or a destination that got you going, I guess. There was a sort of a horizon line, Africa, and the connection to that. How important do you think it is to have, I guess, a purpose to your trip, to your travel? You didn't sort of set off aimlessly thinking, I'm just going to go out somewhere in the world. You thought, I've got African connection or roots. I want to visit Africa. And from that, you then built a bigger trip around it. So I just wonder how important having a marker to aim for is in getting you out the front door, so to speak.
Dreams, they're where adventures begin, aren't they? And if you have a dream about seeing something or getting involved in something, then that gives you a big part of the spur, doesn't it? I think, when I go to a country, I'll for the first time, I'll make a list of the top 10 things that I would ideally like to see in that country. Now, I know that I'm not going to see them all because some of them will just be far too expensive on a traveler's budget. But let's say I end up seeing at least 3 of them. Well, they're great incentives to go to that country. Those things that I know about in advance and have just sparked something in me that make me want to go to that country. There might be 3 or 4 other things that I would have liked to have gone to, but there'll be alternatives to those, similar, but that just don't cost as much to go and see. And it's those things. Yeah, of course. I don't want to get on my bike and do a big trip and ride across the surface of a place. I want to shake the hands of the local people. And we were talking before we started recording about this cloth behind my head here.
Yeah.
And that's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. This comes from Zimbabwe. And when Birgit and I were traveling, we decided that as much as possible, we would buy things from craftsmen that we could actually see doing the work. And this was a perfect example. We discovered a bunch of ladies who were sitting on a spread of grass and they were hand painting these things. So we didn't buy it from the guy who was selling it where the buses stop and this sort of stuff. It was actually straight from the ladies, and having that connection with the local culture because of hunting those things out was a really interesting thing to do. We bought chairs in Malawi that were made to our design by a chap who sat with us and said, "What would you like?" And I've got a little motorcycle that's made out of palm fronds, and it's a copy of Libby. And this chap sat on the sand next door to Libby and just made it, the copy. Pardon?
Where did you carry the chairs on the bike?
It was a funny sight carrying these on the back of the bikes. You know how Malawi chairs fold? They've got one piece that slots into the other. They're actually very clever, and they're incredibly comfortable to sit on. So you can almost flat pack them. We carried them from Malawi to Harare, and we posted them back from Harare in Zimbabwe. And both of them made it, although one of them we hadn't packed quite well enough. It cracked a little bit, but they still made it back. And one of the disadvantages of traveling with a motorcycle is in places where they're making great local arts and crafts, isn't it? Is not being able to buy these things. But sometimes you just got to allow yourself to look really stupid, haven't you?
It's explaining to somebody trying to sell you. I mean, in Indonesia, somebody was trying to sell me a giant rock, like this big piece of local. I don't know what it was. And I'm saying I'm traveling on a bike. And he's like, "Yeah, I know," but he's trying to. And I said, "I just can't carry a rock on my motorcycle." And I think it was difficult sometimes explaining why you couldn't buy the wooden elephant or the drum set in India or something like that. I mean, thankfully I didn't buy anything, but you can see how sort of the Top Gear sketch with the boat on the back of the mopeds in Vietnam could almost be a reality if you didn't know how to say no to people.
Yep. No, absolutely. Yeah, I wouldn't mind doing another trip down through Africa on a Land Rover, for example, because then I can buy as much as I like and carry it to the next post office and ship it back.
What does the future hold, Sam? What have you got? Obviously, COVID restrictions, whatever. But what's your plan? Have you got a plan going forward? Years ahead, more trips, or settling for the big one that you had, or?
It's actually been quite an oddball time for all of us. It has, hasn't it? And all of us had plans for the next year that was due to happen. And well, of course, everything's been shot out of the water over the last year, hasn't it? I had planned another 2 big trips in the United States. I'm getting an absolute buzz out of spending more time there. I'm learning so much more about the different states and about the cultures, because, well, as well as I do, the United States is not just a country with one culture. It's a collection of countries, each with their own cultures. And I'm fascinated by it. So much so that I bought a bike, which I now keep over there in the United States. So, I was supposed to be over there doing that last year, and I was hoping that I was going to be there this year. But I think things are moving too slowly for that to happen. So I'm very patiently waiting and planning for next year. But Birgit and I also have a couple of trips that we'd like to do, just shorter ones. Birgit's very lucky in that with her job, she works like stink, and she can accrue flexi time and use leave. And if she's lucky, then because we tend to go away at times when it's not school holiday time and that sort of thing, sometimes we can get a month off. And we can bunk off on our bikes and we can head off somewhere. We did a few magic trips in Portugal for a month at a time and just got way off the beaten track and just meandered the back roads and the dirt roads and this sort of thing. Loved it. We'd both like to go back to Slovenia and spend proper time there. We've ridden through and we're blown away by it.
Yeah, amazing, isn't it?
It's absolutely gorgeous, isn't it? People are great.
At half the price. That's how I saw it.
Yeah. There's got to be lots of little windy back roads and dirt roads and things like that have got to be absolutely fascinating. Probably taking one back in time. So I would love to do that.
When we did the riding back from Bulgaria 2019, we came up the Croatian coast and into Slovenia. And we came over sort of alpine roads, windy roads, and we didn't see people for all morning, and it was spectacular riding. I was amazed by Slovenia. Really, couldn't believe how nice it was, how pretty and how clean and ordered it was. Yeah, it was like Austria, but not with the crazy prices.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we enjoyed the people too. Very, very friendly. And it's a little bit of a cliche, isn't it? Everybody's friendly out there in the world, but actually some countries people really, really are, aren't they? And we found that everywhere we went in Slovenia. I mean, in part it helps because at school, the two languages that the kids learn are either English or German. And quite often, apparently, they're guided according to what career you want to follow. So if you want to follow a career in logistics, for example, then you tend to learn German. And if you want to go into international business or tourism, then you tend to learn English, and that sort of thing. But it just meant that between Birgit and I, there was always somebody that we could talk to, because, of course, Birgit's German.
Yeah. And do you get the same joy from these shorter trips? Because someone might assume that once you've done the big trip, then the only way to get the thrill of that again is to go on another big trip. But do you get the same sense of adventure from a smaller trip closer to home, or is it a different type of adventure?
Yes.
Different.
No, it's a different type of adventure, but yeah, still get the buzz. By going somewhere that's new, with new customs and cultures, and by going not expecting to cover a huge number of miles, but to go slowly, to stop, to talk to people, to enjoy the views, to eat the local food, those sorts of things, then it's exactly the same. And by going somewhere new, I still get that sensation of uncertainty, that element of fear of the unknown. And the day that I stop getting that, that's the day that I need to hang up my traveling hat and do something completely different. I like that uncertainty. But a lot of that comes from traveling slowly. And I know how fortunate we are to get a month. I don't get that sensation really with 2 weeks. But with a month, yeah, I do, because there's more immersion possibility in a month.
Okay, well, fingers crossed we can get out for a month or so. Well, it's looking likely June, July, isn't it? At least we'll be able to get a little bit away.
I think it's looking a lot more possible, and what a positive feeling that is.
Yeah, I'm going to say even myself, I felt a little bit better. Yesterday's news that just, I don't know, there's some buds of rays of hope opening up, and it looks like trips can go ahead. It looks like I can do like a Land's End Jolly Groats in May, for example, which the thought of having to cancel it again was just, it saps you of your energy, doesn't it? But to know that there's a possibility that you can, a week in the UK is more than enough. It's more than we'll ever need at the minute to get that.
I should think that there isn't a single person watching this that hasn't got itchy feet and itchy wheels after all of this. We're all wanting to be out.
Yeah, it has been interesting. It's been nice to appreciate closer to home in a sense. I mean, for me, it's given me time at home with a newborn and things like that. So it's taking the rough with the smooth, isn't it? Or looking for the positives in the negative, I guess, which is the essence of traveling as well.
It really is. And it's one of the things that I think most people bring home with them from a big trip. It's perspective. It's appreciation of what they've actually got at home. It's whenever I get back from a big trip, the first thing I go and do is to pour myself a glass of water from the tap and drink it. Just the pure safety of being able to drink a glass of water. It's the little things like that normally we just take for granted, but so many parts of the world you can't. And the perspective that it gives is so important. And I think that you hit the nail well and truly on the head from the sanity point of view for dealing with the whole business of COVID and lockdown. It's been taking the step back to look for the positives. And, Birgit and I have just been so grateful that we've had each other. Because we've not been solo in an apartment and dealing with everything on our own and so on. We've had each other to chat with and to share with. Our roof doesn't leak. How brilliant is that? Our stove still works, etc., etc., etc. There are so many positives, aren't there?
Yeah, and this weekend you've got there's an event I gather online. I should know about it because I'm involved with it as well, to be honest.
I was just going to say, Nathan.
Leave you to tell us what it is.
And I'm really looking forward to watching yours, because I spent so much of my life outside of the United Kingdom. I don't know an awful lot about here, and yours is about traveling within the UK, isn't it?
It is, which is quite timely, I think, given everything. But yeah, I must admit, I do enjoy what the UK has to offer. I think the more and more you ride it, the more you realise it as it's got pretty much everything you would need. Well, it's got everything you need really. Got good roads, good scenery. There's some dirt roads if you want it. Then there's also the space to escape, which you don't always associate with the UK. You always think of it as overcrowded, but I think if you pick the right roads, there's lots of potential for escape. My favourite road on that lands on John O'Groats is where you come sort of out through the Peak District, and you're on the sort of back roads, the B roads. You come through Delft and a few other places, and then it's like an empty moorland road, and then it suddenly crests over the hill and it drops down under the M62 that runs, I guess, leads to Manchester. And that road is absolutely, full to the brim with traffic and trucks and everything. And it's a momentary glimpse of the intensity of day-to-day life. And then you just sort of sword through under it on this quiet and empty road, and then it carries on empty and remote all the way into home, into where Ian Coates lives. I'm trying to think where that is. And it's such a great example of that. Actually, if you do get off the main roads and the main highways, there's lots of empty roads to explore. And so I like it going under that M62. You think, oh, then people the trucks are going on about the business, and you're just on this little holiday on your motorbike.
It's that old saying, isn't it, about motorways being the fastest way to get you from A to B without seeing anything?
Yeah.
And I totally agree with you. The bits of this country that I enjoy the most are the ones that I find on the B and C roads. That's where we're finding the real history. And you can almost feel like you're riding back in time sometimes, can't you?
Yeah.
You're riding back into Agatha Christie land in some places. The old buildings with the wisteria growing up the outside, and there are still plenty of farms out there that look as if they haven't changed much structure-wise and so on for generations.
There's lots of places really. So what are we talking about? It's the Armchair Adventure Film Festival, isn't it? That's what
it's their boot camp. Matt and Reese came up with the idea of doing a weekend where they were going to take people back to the basics. So anybody who was hungering after going traveling but didn't really know what they were wanting to do or how to do it, they were going to run a whole series of courses with people doing classes, presentations, to give novices a particular idea, to plant seeds of thought, if anything else, for want of a better way of putting it, of what the possibilities are and what you do, what you can do. Now, my presentation is on what gear do you actually need to do a big trip, and about loading possibilities. There is so much misinformation. There's just a bog of general information out there. But what do you actually really need? Now, I know in Nathan Millwood language, it's, what is it, a passport and a wallet?
No, toothbrush and a credit card, Sam.
That's right.
And a passport.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can. Well, I mean, you pretty much proved it. There are fine lines, and my presentation is just going to be going through all of the different possibilities, or as many of the different possibilities that I can cover, and why you should or should not. And then it's going to be rounding off with, well, what do you actually need? And I'm not going to be telling anybody how to do their trip. I'm not going to be telling anybody what they have to carry or how they have to load it. If I can get everybody who watches the session to go away with two, cool, I didn't know that, or that works, what a nice idea, thoughts in their mind, then my job is going to have been well done. But it is really aimed at people who don't know very much. It's a course for novices. And I just want to cut through all of the stuff and talk about things that are important. And we'll be touching on things like the paperwork. What paperwork do you need to pack with you? And what's a carnet? And where in the world would you need a carnet? And do you need to have all singing, all dancing suspension on your bike? And what spares do you have to carry? All of those sorts of things, or perhaps just carry nothing.
Now, is it going to be? How long have you got, Sam, on this talk?
I've got an hour and a half.
God. Yeah, that's
It's
a lot, isn't it? Yeah.
it started off as being a 45-minute session, and I got back in touch with Matt and Reese once I'd started laying this thing out, and I was just thinking,
No.
I can't do this justice in 45 minutes, even an hour and a half, because I'm not telling anybody how to do it, because I'm putting suggestions forward. Yeah, an hour and a half. But we're going to have question and answer as well. So, you know, if anybody's sort of, well, hang on a minute, Sam, you haven't touched about that. What do you think? Or I was thinking about doing this. Any thoughts on that? Then we'll have the opportunity for that. And it'll also be the opportunity for a few people to call me complete and utter idiot, which is not far from the truth.
No, I never say that, Sam. So that's this weekend. That's the Armchair Adventure Festival workshop.
Boot camp.
So that's Matt and Reese, who rode the sidecar around the world. That's basically that's been their lockdown project, hasn't it? To set up a digital online version of a real world travelers meeting, I guess. And they've done a great job of it, I have to say.
No,
I think there's still tickets. It's a ticketed event, isn't it, this weekend, because it's workshops. Yep. I think there are still tickets available.
There aren't.
So yeah,
I think there are 30 hours of sessions over the weekend, and it costs £45. So if anybody's better at maths than me, then it's about what, £1.25 an hour for all of the different presentations. Some of it's films, some of it's straight presentations, some of it's classes. Tiffany Coates, for example, Lisa and Simon Thomas. I just all sorts.
Manicom bloke.
Who?
You know that guy.
Yeah, him with a hat.
He's got 4 books, we should say, shouldn't we?
Oh, well, thank you very much.
People best-selling books, so I think that's worth certainly a mention, is it not?
Thank you.
Where can people get those books?
They can get them either direct from me, from sammanicom.com, or they can get them from Amazon. If they're outside of the UK, then my suggestion is go to the Book Depository. These guys do free worldwide delivery, or the price that they quote includes the cost of postage. And yeah, well, as I'm sure you found out, like all of we freelance authory types, the cost of postage has gone up stupidly in the last year.
It does.
To send one of my books to Holland now costs £9. I mean, ridiculous. I write too much. Obviously, my books are too fat.
Yours are just too fat for large letters, aren't they?
They are.
They are. Yeah. This is the geekiness of self-published authors, isn't it? Knowing what exact size that a large letter comes in at. But no, it's. I think it's fair to say that for any self-employed, self-published author, it's been a tricky old time, hasn't it? With the shows, as I know, that a big bulk of where you sell books is at the shows, physical, face-to-face. And with all those being cancelled, it does really impact on your earnings. I think it's
significantly so. I really like the shows, and I know you do, because we've worked on stands next door to each other several times, and I look at the expression on your face when you're talking to people. It's the people that you're meeting all of the time, isn't it? Kindred spirits, people with the same passion that you've got, and I'm just fascinated by it, and I get an absolute buzz. Motorcycle Live, for example, 9 days of it. Well, when you've had the setup days and the travel days and all of the rest of it, you're looking at least 11 or 12 days worth, aren't you? And of course, it's absolutely shattering. But the energy comes from all of the people that we're meeting at those shows, doesn't it? Old friends linking up with them again, and new friends to be made. Plus, of course, earning a living.
I'm never doing that again. And then you're back again. No, it's good to hear that NEC, at least Motorcycle Live, have put in December this year as a potential date for the next one. I think that's let's keep fingers crossed that will go ahead. But I think I don't want to talk too much longer, because I know people get bored after 45 minutes or so. But just on the aspect of book writing, I think just give us a quick insight into the act of writing a book, and then more importantly, I guess, selling and marketing a book, certainly when you're self-published. I think people assume that it's a road to riches, isn't it, writing a book? And I don't think, yeah. What would you say to anyone who's been on a trip thinking about putting pen to paper?
Prepare yourself to embark upon a new adventure that's exactly the same group of sensations that you've just had with your journey. You've got a whole ton of new things that you're going to get a buzz out of, things that you've got to learn, things that you'll make mistakes about, places that you'll be going that you would never have dreamt that you would end up traveling to. And that's all to do with writing a book. If you're going to go on a big trip, then write a journal. And do it every day, even if it's only going to be a few keywords, because your memory, you're going to be on intake overload every day. And that means you just forget so much. And it's those details about how things sounded and they smelled and the people's expressions or whatever else it is that add real character to your book. So write that journal. When you come back, try and find yourself time to get in what I call as a thought bubble. In other words, somewhere where you're not going to have constant background noises or somebody going, Mike, Sam, whatever, just when you're in the zone and the words are flowing, and try and get yourself that time, even if it's only 2 or 3 hours a day. If you can get it where you've got it all day, where you can just get the words down, then fantastic. Everybody writes in a different way. Some people want to have complete structure to their writing. In other words, they'll lay out the key points that they want to cover in each of the chapters before they then start writing. And other people use what I call the brainstorming technique. There is no proper way to write a book. Brainstorming, that's where you just sit down, you've got your keyboard in front of you, and you let those thoughts flow out of you as they come into your mind, regardless of whether they're in order or not. If they're powerful enough to bounce up here, then they're powerful enough to get down on the board, and then just sort them out afterwards. The writing of the book is the fun bit. Don't expect to do it in a hurry. It might take you 2 years to write a book. Some people can do it in six months. I can't. I end up doing about 20 different drafts of my books. Into Africa was getting on for 80,000 words longer on the first draft than it actually ended up being when it was printed, because I ended up going through it afterwards and thinking, okay, well, what's interesting to me? But is that necessarily going to be interesting to the reader? The editing side of it is really important. Get yourself a professional editor, not a family member, to do your editing. Somebody who has got a real clue, because an editor is not only somebody who's going to be looking at your punctuation and your grammar, but they're going to be looking for what I call lost opportunities. In other words, cool, that bit's interesting. Can you write some more about that? And rants and rambles. Most authors do rants and rambles. We go off on one, we get all passionate about one particular topic and we write far too much. But actually, then it just becomes boring. You mentioned a few minutes ago about us not talking too long on this because people get bored. That's exactly what it's like with a book, isn't it? You can write too much and then it becomes blah instead of being interesting. The publishing side of things, it's difficult. You've got to have something that is very, very unusual for a mainstream publishing house to take it on board. There's a book called The Writers and Artists Yearbook, and anybody who's thinking about going down the mainstream publishing route should get that book. It's Amazon, Waterstones, your local library, because it just teaches you all about the background and how to go about approaching mainstream publishers. The self-publishing business, since Nathan and I first started doing it, is much easier. The technology is there, the print possibilities, and all of that. When we first started doing this, it was just coming out of what was called vanity publishing. And what a horrible thing that is. That was where you were publishing just for your friends and family to see. And the quality wasn't good. Pardon?
Costing you about £3,000 or whatever the vanity publishing.
Oh, it was mad money, wasn't it? Absolutely. Just so that, you had this thing in your hand that you could share with your family. It's very different now. The techniques are all there. The saying is, everybody has a book in them. I don't disagree with that. Just be aware that it may not be a bestseller. But writing a book is going to take you through your journey again and reliving all of those memories. What a fantastic thing to do. It's almost like having your journey all over again. It's brilliant. If you write a book that works, How wonderful is that? I wrote my books because of 3 reasons. One, I realized how lucky I was to be free enough to go off and do something like this. I didn't have the responsibilities. I didn't have an elderly parent and me being the only child, so therefore the carer. I didn't have children or pets or things like that that meant that I couldn't. I was free enough to do it. So I want to share the stories of the road. I want to share the fun, the mad things, the mishaps, the I didn't know that moments, the laughter, all of the things that go to make a journey. And I want to share those with people who can't go because they've got responsibilities. I want to share the stories with people who love travel, but have got no ambition to go traveling themselves. So what? That's fine. It's the loving the travel and the learning that you get from books that's so important. But I've also written my books because I want to encourage other people to think, actually, you don't have to be anybody special to go off and do a big trip. You can be absolutely ordinary Joe Blogs. I am. Don't claim to be anything else. I make cock-ups and stuff-ups, and I do stupid things, and I say daft things, and all of the rest of it, we all do. You don't have to be anybody special. What you do have to have is a strong enough dream and the understanding that things don't always go right. Things can be positively scary when you're out there from time to time. But actually, how do you deal with that? Have you ever had to deal with something that's positively scary before? And the reality is, most things that go wrong, they're not disasters.
No, no. And would you say that the real effort or the real work with a book starts once you've got the actual finished book in your hand?
Yeah.
You know, the act of selling it is, or marketing it, is where the trudgery begins, isn't it?
It is.
We've carried boxes and boxes of books to shows that we think it'll be good, and then you carry boxes and boxes. But I mean, I've had stalls in our local high street when we lived in Worcester. You know, they'd have the artisan market on a Sunday, all the olive sellers and the donut sellers, and then I'd be stuck on the end trying to sell a book. I mean, the worst thing I did, I went to Holland to a book show and to a bike show, and I had to stand there, and then pretty much the first person came up and said, have you got a translation in Dutch then? And I said, no. So I realized I'd spent all this money going to Holland to sell a book in English, and you know, it was just a pointless waste of exercise. But you try, don't you? I think when you've got, it is really where the work starts once the book is written and published.
I think most of us are actually quite shy people. And I think one of the hardest things for all of us is spending so much time saying what I've done is the best thing since sliced bread, or words to that effect, because it's such an alien
story. Aren't I amazing?
Yeah, exactly. It's really hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
I am a shy person, and I know I don't come across as being that, but getting up on stage to do a presentation, my hands are like this beforehand. And every show that happens, I'm really nervous. Am I going to say or do something that is just not me and that is just really, really stupid? The marketing and promoting of your book is incredibly difficult because you spend so much time trying to find new ways to introduce it and to get it out to new markets. If you are with a mainstream publishing house, it can work very, very well for you, but it can also be that it's full of promises and they're actually just hot air. And actually it still comes down to you to make all of the effort and do all of the work. Now, I live 5 floors up in an old Victorian house, and I dread having a bad show because I've got to carry all those blooming books back up all of these flipping stairs.
I can imagine.
Oh, absolutely.
Isn't it? The slog starts with the selling, but and I think also it's very important to prepare yourself once you've written a book or put yourself out there. It's the same with a YouTube video equally. You know, for the negativity that you might get. Not everyone's going to like your book. Not everyone likes what you do. You are going to get that 1-star review. You are going to get that, you know, comment on a video that you put up saying you're an idiot. And I think you have to accept that once you put yourself out there, you unfortunately or realistically have to take what comes with it, good and bad.
Like I said, it's an adventure. The whole thing is, isn't it? The rough with the smooth. Can I just say a thank you to everybody who takes the time out to bother to put a 5-star, 4-star, 3-star rating up on Amazon and Goodreads, and an even bigger thank you to those people who make the effort to write a sentence or two of comment. To you guys, you are absolutely fantastic for the likes of us, because we do get our downtimes and we do get our critics, and then that somebody bothers to take the time out of their day to say that they enjoyed what you've done. It's such an important thing, thing. And when you don't have a huge advertising budget, and no self-publishing author does, it's those reviews that make all of the difference in the world. We really, really value you guys. So thank you very much.
Yeah, we're going to send you all a card, aren't we, Sam? Did we say? We're going to send you.
Oh, we'd love it. We'd love it.
No, it is. Yeah, it does. It is nice to get some reviews, favourable, and the bad ones you just learn to say, well, you can't you can't please everyone, and nor should you need to, really.
It's the same as what's the best bike to go and do an around the world trip? Well, actually, the best bike is down to the individual and what their dreams are. There is no best bike, and so there is no best book. There is no best YouTube or whatever else it is. It's best for some people. I mean, it's absolutely rubbish for others.
I always take heart when, because you get a negative comment on your video or whatever. I always take heart from seeing somebody like Danny McCaskill, who does the amazing BMX mountain bike videos up in the Highlands, where he's doing the most incredible stunts and things, the most incredible cinematography, and then he's got 2,000 dislikes. And I think, well, if you can do that, go to that much effort and still get dislikes, and it's clear you're never going to get 100% positivity. No. I think with a book, you just have to accept that, don't you? But no, I think it's been really good chatting, Sam. I don't want to drag us on too long, because I know people will be saying, oh, them two buggers, I wish they'd shut up and stop waffling. So we'll call it a day, but it's been really good to hear from you and catch up from you.
Likewise.
It's obviously been a long winter for us all, so it's nice to let's talk with some excitement of the adventures and the wheel turning that's about to come as we enter into spring. So
absolutely, you hit the nail right on the head there. Spring is on its way, and yesterday, I don't know about you, but we had an absolutely glorious day here.
Yes.
Just being able to go outside in the sunshine for a little while, what a fantastic feeling it is. Missed it. Taking vitamin C tablets and vitamin D tablets just ain't the same, is it?
No. Back to wind and rain today, though. Up here in North Devon, but
yeah, we are here too. Oh well. But no, I wish you every success, Nathan. I think what you've done with Dorothy Speed Shop is absolutely fantastic. I mean, I saw it when you were in the sort of halfway stage with it, and it looks amazing now.
It looks better, I'm certain. Yeah.
When you get one of your days and you've got an empty slot, then let me know, because I'm not going to pinch a slot where a paying customer is going to come and keep you earning a living. But if you get a slot that's free, then let me know, because I would.
Or you know, either posties or what? Or what, your own bike or the A2 bikes?
I would like to come on the A2 bikes. I would love the opportunity to try all of the different types of bikes. I've not ridden any of them before, and what a fantastic opportunity to try them all within a day. They are bikes that I would all be interested in. I really like Libby, and I like my F800 GS in the United States, but I'm absolutely not averse to riding smaller bikes. They are so capable and do so much on them. So I would get an absolute buzz out of trying all of those. And like I said, to get the opportunity to try them all in one day, wow, fantastic.
I was to admit, I was out on the Guzzi the other day. I had to make an essential journey on the Guzzi, and as I was riding, I thought, it's just too much. I don't need this. Even a Guzzi, which is, I guess, classed as a mid-sized bike, I thought, I don't need this. It's too much cost, too much power, too much weight. I thought I am perfectly happy on any of those other A2 bikes. So it's been quite eye-opening for me, really, that those bikes, smaller as they are perfect for everything I need to do with a bike. And that's quite a good revelation to realise, because it means motorcycling is a lot cheaper.
There used to be so much snobbery around, wasn't it, about size of bike? And
Yeah, yeah.
well, I'm not going to go where I could go with that comment. But I think that a lot of that snobbery is slowly beginning to disappear as people realise what the possibilities are with smaller bikes. And of course, the technology has changed quite dramatically in the last 10 years, hasn't it? And it's made smaller bikes so much more capable than they used to be. I mean, there's no way I'm going to sell Libby, for example.
No.
That 800cc bike, and she's like a third leg now.
Yeah.
And I know what she'll do, and she knows what I'm going to do. Usually something stupid. We fall off a lot, but that's down to me, not her. And I love riding the longer trips with her. The F800 has been a new learning curve for me, but that's an important bike for me in the United States because I'm tending to carry pop-up banners and books and all of those sorts of things. So I've got to have something that will cope with a bit more weight. Plus, all of my living stuff, my tent and my stove and all of the rest of it. So a bigger bike is very much what's needed. But if I was doing a trip the length of Africa again, would I ride on such a big bike? I'd actually think about it.
Yeah, no, for certain. I just for anyone thinking of coming down onto the A2 bikes, I am going to be adding a CB500X, which I think. Ooh. Yeah, so I think it's. I'm very much interested in the A2 bikes. I think the CB500X certainly is the pick of the road bias ones in terms of long distance travel. So it's been missing from the fleet, I think, and so that will sit alongside the KTM 390, the GS 310, the Himalayan, and the CRF 250 Rally. So I think then you've got a full range of bikes to suit different people. So yeah, anybody coming down from April onwards, I think I'll have that 500X in place. So
terrific. No, that's great. That's excellent news because I itch to ride one of those too. I mean, I love my BMWs. They've been friends to me for a very long time, and I hope they will continue being friends to me, but it's not going to stop me riding other bikes and being interested in them. Yeah, there's so many possibilities, aren't there?
Well, it'll be interesting to see which you prefer. The Himalayan is winning the race at the minute. I think twice as many votes for the Himalayan as anything else, which I think is probably down to my influence because I do sell its virtues when people get off it. I'm almost like an eager salesman, even though I've got nothing to gain. I'm like, what did you think? What did you think? I almost need them to validate my own opinion of it, really, I suppose. But no, it's interesting, the back-to-back riding, just what people want from a bike and then how perception meets reality, I think. The people might come with saying, I really want a CRF or a KTM or a Himalayan, and then they ride them and they actually go, actually, that's not for me. So it's I'd like to think it's offering a worthwhile service for people to weed out those bikes they don't want.
And I think the area that you live and work out of is actually perfect for doing that because you've got such a mix of roads and such magic scenery.
Yeah.
I hadn't been up to North Devon for ages until we came up to see you when you're setting up Dorothy's Speed Shop. And we took a good old bimble around the back lanes and all of this sort of stuff. And we were just, big time smiling. The coast is quite beautiful along there too, isn't it?
And quiet, a bit busy during the summer, but the rest of the time it's as quiet as anything. And there's easy green lanes if people want to try the bikes on a bit of dirt. So yeah, no, I like it. The building itself is a bit drafty and a bit damp, but as soon as you turn out the door, you're straight onto that easy flowing road along the meadows, and I think that makes it perfect, really. So. Yeah. We're waffling again, aren't we? I better let you go.
Yeah, but you get two enthusiastic blokes together, and what happens? We're talking bikes and travel and all the rest of it.
And there'll be people at home saying, "Oh, shut up! I'm going to do me washing." No, but thanks ever so much, Sam. Thanks for taking the time, mate. And I can't wait to see us all out and about at the physical events. As much as we love the online presence, the real world is what matters. So,
yeah,
see you there in the real world.
Yeah, no, really looking forward to it. Roll on. That's appropriate, isn't it?
Yeah, roll on. All right, mate. Take it easy. Look after
Cheers.
Cheers, Sam. Thanks for
See you.